What's up for this land fam? Today, I'm going to talk to you about knives. But not just kind of the normal way we talk about knives. I want to start off with first, why do I love knives so much? Like, I really do. I love knives. And the people that watch this channel and check in also really love knives. And here's the reason that knives are such a big deal to me. I believe, knives are critical and inherent in the evolution and development of mankind. It was the edged tool. It was the axe. It was the stone blade. It was these first things where mankind was able to say, I have this tool, and now that piece of nature can look like how I want it to look like. This is where we first were able to say, oh man, that animal's hide can be clothing because we can take it, we can cut it, we can shape it. Oh, look at that tree, that can be a house. Oh, look at that chunk of wood, that can be a spoon. It was with the cutting tool that we were able to properly shape the world around us as we saw fit. And it's been with us. Every culture throughout all of history has had cutting tools that we use to shape the world around us, which means cutting tools and knives and axes and things like that are critical to what human civilization is, which is why it's so fun to think about why any particular civilization or culture around the world developed the knives the way they did. Like, why is it that the Nepalese made the kukri the way they did? Why is it that the Finns, and when I say Finns, I'm going to say like Scandinavians, the Nordic peoples, why did they make the lauku and the puko the way they did? Why is it that American axes developed in one way, but like Scandinavian axes developed a different way? Why is it that in South America they don't really bother much with axes? I mean, they do, right? But like compared to a machete versus the environment around us is so significant in dictating the blades we create, and that just means that like our blades are so deeply human. And because blades are so deeply human, they carry with them astonishing histories. And it's today with that idea of the history of a blade that I want to show you these particular three pieces. And on the surface, they're kind of like, okay, whatever, you got some pieces there, but they actually carry with them a deep history, and they actually carry with them heritage, my own heritage. Each of these knives I received just recently after my grandmother passed, and these were still in her home after my grandfather had passed some years earlier. And it was kind of these leftovers, and the rest of the family were just not all that interested in them comparatively, but I'm a knife guy. I had to have them. And the more I saw them, the more I just was like, oh my God, I can't believe what these are. So I want to take you one by one through these pieces to show you what they are. I'll give you kind of the preview. I've got a Victorinox, an old Victorinox here, a discontinued model. I've got an old case knife, sharpened down to increasing toothpicks. And I have a machete that was issued to the Marines in the South Pacific. So let's take a closer look and dig into these and talk about the heritage. All right, I have the camera set up in kind of an Antiques Roadshow kind of look over here. And I'll start right here with this Victorinox. Now, one thing I do have to say about these blades before I get into it is I never actually got to talk to my grandfather about them or learn about them from him. So a lot of this is kind of a mix between what I learned from talking with the family as well as my own research. So starting here with the Victorinox, this is the Victorinox Walker. It's got just the cap lifter sort of screwdriver kind of deal there with the wire bender. It's got a saw and it's got a blade. That's all it's got going on for it. And this is part of their, what is it, the 83 millimeter models. And aside from maybe one particular model, almost all of their 83 and their models in the 80s have been discontinued and they don't make them anymore. Now he, as I understand, he had this model for a number of years, or maybe a decade or so, even before he died. This particular model, the Walker, the Victorinox Walker, going for a walk, which is actually great, aptly named. It's got like kind of the bare bones minimum tools you would want. But this particular model was discontinued in, I think, 2021. But he had this longer than that for sure. It's got the Celador, and it's just the kind of the 2-layer Victorinox model, and it's really cool. It's I've carried it a little bit. It's one of those things where it's like you worry about carrying them, not because like they're so expensive or fancy, but because they carry the story. And so he carried this in his pocket for many years. It was one of those things that was always on him. I have a memory, I think, of him pulling it out and using it once. I didn't get to see him a lot, but it's cool to have that piece of history and a cool discontinued model of a Victorinox. This guy right here, this one is really cool. This is a case trapper. It looks like it has maybe the stag handles. I don't think it's abalone. It might be abalone. Maybe one of you guys will know for sure and recognize it. But I was like, oh man, how old is that? Because, I mean, you can just see this thing has been sharpened and sharpened and used and used. The shapes of the blades are no longer the ones that were originally in the knife. Which means it's been around and it's been used heavily. It's heavily patinaed. And it's just a beautiful piece. And so when I checked out the blade stamps, let's see, I don't know if you'll be able to catch the focus on that, but on the main blade here, the stamp says Case Bradford, and then on the bottom edge right here, or on the smaller blade, the stamp is, let me double check it in, Case XX Tested. And from what I could tell, just researching on the Case website with the history of their markings, this one was likely produced between the years of 1914 and 1920. And right off the bat, that was kind of a whoa. That struck me as kind of wild, because here is a knife in my hand that is still totally functional and usable and is over 100 years old. But also that meant that this knife was made probably before my grandfather was even born. He served in World War II on the USS Catron, which will come up when I talk about the machete. But that would have, put him in his 18 to 20. Like, it might have been made right around when he was born. It's like this was older than he was. And so talking with my mother and uncles, they suspect that this was actually my great-grandfather's knife that he had and used and then gave to my grandfather at some point. I don't know when exactly, but this is one that was found buried in his it was a toolbox just sitting there. I mean, he could have even bought it used, gotten it from someone else, but it's one of those things where the family suspects it was my great-grandfather's given to my grandfather. And so now we have this awesome, like, multi-generational, over 100-year-old knife. And the beauty of this one is what's going to kind of bring me into a later point, I hope you'll see. Then I have here this giant machete. So this machete has this awesome leather scabbard. It's still wickedly sharp. On the sheath, you have the markings here: Collins and Company, Legitimus 13. There's a 13 stamped there. And then on the blade itself, there's also a U.S. Legitimus Collins and Company 1942. So in my research, the Collins and Company was contracted by the United States government to produce these machetes that were issued to Marines in the South Pacific. And again, this kind of brings into that idea of like that connection to the land. In jungle environments, there's not a lot of big, heavy hardwoods. There's a lot of softwoods and vines and lighter vegetation. I mean, it's thick, but it's not stout compared to trees farther north. Therefore, you don't need an axe, you need a machete. And a machete is what you use to clear out all of the space. And American GIs going in there didn't need axes, they didn't need hatchets, they needed machetes to clear out and go through the jungle islands in the South Pacific. And so this is one of those things. And as I look at it and as I examine it, this is a machete that I suspect was probably never used, and if it was very lightly used. There's some slight patina and rust spots that are on it. It got some kind of rust bits going on around here. Very light patina on it. Some rust over here. And if it was used, it was certainly 100% never used by my grandfather, because my grandfather was a turret commander on the USS Catron. He was in the Navy. He never actually made any landfall in any combat scenarios. He did command a gun turret. He did shoot down a number of Japanese Zeros from his with his turret and his gunnery crew. And the Catron was deemed the Lucky Katie. For a few reasons. It almost got blown up a couple of times, and they got called the Lucky Katie. I have his memoir that might be actually kind of fun to make a recorded video of just me reading it. But so this is likely, and again, he didn't talk a lot about his days in the war. A lot of vets don't. My dad always said there were two kinds of guys that came back from Vietnam. It was one of the only times I heard him curse. And he said there were two guys that came back from Vietnam, those that don't talk about it and those that won't shut the fuck up about it. And I kind of found that to be the case with my grandpa. He didn't talk a lot about it. He did every once in a while, but for the most part, he didn't talk about it. And, you can kind of understand why that's the case. So, the way I suspect he got this, there's a number of war material that he had from the time period, and a lot of guys, the way they got a lot of the stuff was either it was issued to them and they took it and snuck it home, or they traded for it with other guys, or mysteriously, as the soldiers were cataloging and writing down the things that were in the stores, miscounted, and things ended up going home with people. Eventually things got surplused as well. So this may have been a thing he purchased later in surplus. I don't think so. I think it's one of those things he brought home with him from the war. And I don't know that he was issued this because he wasn't a Marine. He did not make landfall. He did not do combat on the ground. So I think he either brought it home from a ship or a store, a cache, or traded a Marine for it at some point. I don't know that full story, but I do know that this is one of those genuine military issued machetes from the South Pacific. Alright, so there's the three pieces that I got from my grandfather in the history as I understand them before. If you guys know a bit more about the history of these, just from what you were able to see in the video, share it in the comments, let me know. I love learning about this stuff. I love the history of these things. This is really powerful stuff. And the reason it's powerful, and the reason this case especially feels so powerful, is, not only are knives one of those things that are just always a part of the human experience in the world, but knives are one of those wonderful objects that we're able to make heritage pieces for generations afterwards. As I think through the knives that I have and the knives I've collected and the knives that I've sold, the knives I just can't bring myself to get rid of, and as I hold this one right here, the one that was a great-grandfather's, that was a grandfather's, that is now a grandson's, there's the idea that A good knife is a good tool that's a deeply human tool, and it's one that can carry on through generations and help provide you and those that come after you a genuine sense of place and purpose in the world, a connection to the story of humanity that led to you. This is an artifact of the people that came before me, the people that led to me, the generations of humanity that existed that have resulted in me, and the story they've created that isn't over that will carry on through my own children. As I collect knives and as I keep knives and as I sell them and as I don't, and as I use them and as I don't, I think to myself, the way I use them and the places I use them and the purposes I use them for are part of the story that is creating those that come after me. And by keeping them and by passing them on, I am continuing on through a generation, through generations, and a tradition of humanity that we never seem to be able to abandon. And so I think I want to throw that out to you guys to think about with your knives and with your tools and with your land and with the things you build and the stories you tell. How are they going to be? Are they things that will be able to be continued on through generations, that you'll be able to share, that your children will share, that your grandchildren will share? Will you have a grandchild that will hold a knife and say, damn, that's this old and it carried on this long and it's a part of my story? Which of your knives are heritage pieces and which of them are just kind of junk? Which of them are worth keeping and which of them are worth just passing on and letting go? And which of them are worth passing down? This is a thing I've been thinking a lot more and more as my children get older and start moving out of the house, as my grandparents have died and my parents get older. As time passes, my interest in preserving those stories through time goes on or increases, and the things that I am passionate about, like knives or gardening or homesteading or whatever they are, how do I do those things and participate in those things in a way that will continue that tradition of the story that keeps going? So with that, thank you guys for watching. I intend hopefully to make another piece about the knives I wish and hope to pass on and let continue on the story down the line. This is one about the ones that came down the line to me and which are the ones I want to push down the line to others. I'll make another video about that in the future. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. Oh, and also in the comments, man, share. Do you have any pieces that you hope to pass down and share along the line as well? What are they, and who do you hope gets them, and what's the story you hope to tell with them as you move forward? So yeah, go ahead and do stupid things in safe ways. Godspeed.